Welcome back, everyone. It's me, Colin Datsupa, host of Metropolis. Next to me, Ivory from McGill. How are you doing, Ivory?
I'm doing all right under the circumstances.
Of course. Well, I'm happy you're doing all right. I guess let's get into these circumstances. And I think we've seen a lot of mobilization from students in the name of Palestinian solidarity over the last 2 years now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it extends much further than that, but this really kind of came to a flashpoint with the October 7th, and then, of course, the reaction against the Palestinians with that. Something we saw at McGill, of course, the student encampments, something we saw here at Concordia, increased mobilization, trying to find out where the university's money is going to. And, of course, we saw this was not exclusive to Montreal universities. Of course, there's a whole global movement of students who are occupying university grounds, setting up encampments to increase pressure on their universities in the ways that they either fund or are complicit in genocide or in Gaza. Recently, it seems like McGill is trying to put some of these student groups on the back foot, it seems. Could you tell me a bit about, I guess, specific ways that McGill is organizing, pushing back against your organization, QBerg?
Yeah, so QBerg stands for the Quebec Public Interest Research Group. We've been around since 1980. We've been a fee levy group since 1989. That means that we are technically separate from the university, but we get funding from students. And the way that we get funding from students is via a contract that we have with the university called the Memorandum of Agreement, or the MOA. We also support like a number of local grassroots groups, as well as student groups that are, agitating for social justice, for just like grassroots organizing in general and activist stuff.
Incredible. What are some ways that you help these groups?
We provide financial and administrative support. I think one key thing that we do especially is to get, sort of tap into like the reservoir of new McGill students. Like a lot of McGill students aren't from Montreal. They arrive here, they have a lot of energy, they're really excited to and passionate about social justice causes, and they don't really know where to go to. We have some groups that we work with, and we say, we know that these groups need volunteers. So depending on what you're interested in, like migrant justice or prison abolition, there are some groups that will take student volunteers, and that way they can sort of benefit. It's a mutually beneficial relationship.
Incredible.
Yeah. So one of these groups is Students for Palestine's Honor and Resistance, or SPHR, previously SPHR McGill. And the university issued a notice of default to us saying that we are in default of our contract, our MOA, because of our association with SPHR. They're saying that SPHR is causing vandalism and harassment on campus, and that therefore they are in violation of McGill's code of conduct, and that therefore QBerg is in violation of McGill's code of conduct. And of course, in our MOA, it says that we respect McGill's policies. So that's
quite the long chain of accusations. I mean, the harassment and vandalism is pretty serious, but I'm curious about I guess the ways they define that, or how they view that. Do you agree with that kind of accusation?
We think it's interesting because McGill, of course, has its own disciplinary procedure that students who are suspected of breaking the code of conduct can go through. That procedure is not designed for groups. It's really designed for individual students. So SPHR has not been found guilty by their own disciplinary procedure, I think it'd be one thing if they came to us and they said, the student is a member of QBerg because they paid the fee, but then they had to be expulsed because of disciplinary charges. So now they can't be a member of QBerg. I guess we would say it does say in our contract that we have to abide by this policy. That hasn't happened. They haven't... haven't found SPHR guilty by their own internal processes. SPHR and Quebec court has been found to be illegal or anything like that. They're asking us to. So that's one issue.
Right. Of course. I mean, if they have these processes that clearly kind of define harassment, vandalism, but then these groups are not really accused of that through their own processes. Doesn't really seem to be a well-founded argument. It seems to be, if anything, more perhaps politically based, you know.
That's what we are saying. That's what we're thinking. We think it is like a form of discrimination against SBHR and us for their views on Palestine and their calls for the university to divest from defense companies and to respect the academic boycott against Israel.
Of course.
And their definition of harassment too. You know, we're really concerned that unless we see like like hard evidence through like their own procedures or through like Quebec's legal procedures that there is harassment happening, that they're going to start shifting the definition of harassment a little bit to be targeting is almost all protesting on campus. You know, like you can definitely say that like from one point of view that a student who's following an administration member around on campus asking, oh, why haven't we divested from Palestine? Why aren't you listening to the students? On one hand, you could say that that's harassment, but on the other hand, you could definitely say that that's protesting, that that's a form of that student asking for accountability from their university administration.
Right.
So where do we draw the line? Yeah. And, you know,
it's a dangerous line to draw.
It's a really dangerous line to draw.
If it starts to include forms of protest, right? If people are making sort of rightful demands from whatever authority there is, and I don't know, like I'm imagining like, you know, Mark Carney's in town and people are yelling at him, you know, for any list of demands across a political spectrum, you know, under this kind of definition McGill's using, it seems like that would be harassment more than protesting now. Exactly.
It doesn't seem right for a university to be deciding these lines that are like so hard to draw. That, you know, the encampment last year, they never decided really legally whether it was a form of expression or if it was trespassing, you know, like that decision never got made legally before McGill just used private security to dismantle the encampment.
Right. I mean, I remember they were trying the longest time. I mean, very early on, they tried to get an injunction, right? And they tried to get the SPVM. And I mean, to my personal surprise, I was surprised that the injunction was shot down, and then the SPM was like, we're not going to handle this, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it seems like they're just trying to use any sort of mechanism available to them to try to put some obstacles in the way of some of these groups advocating for justice in Palestine.
Yeah, and especially legal mechanisms, which, you know, makes sense for them. They have like a really prestigious, well-connected law faculty. And even when they are losing in court, that's still time and money that these student groups and like some individuals have to fundraise for, have to spend time doing. There's just like a lot of energy that is being redirected by McGill towards the courts right now. That's really unfair because McGill is a huge institution in comparison to the rest of us. Like, even though it does have a massive deficit right now, they still have orders of magnitude more money.
They have the resources to wage this kind of war.
Yeah, exactly. They have the resources and they have the connections.
No, of course. I mean, it's a classic thing, right? It's like you have these kind of, I guess, like I want to say ragtag in the most loving way, like student groups, right, who are like advocating. But I mean, these groups, it's not like to go through like the court system and these huge long judicial processes takes a lot of I guess knowledge, experience with these systems, and those things are costly, right? It takes a lot of resources to kind of navigate those systems. And it takes resources away from the work you're doing right now.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
And it's something that McGill seems to have. I mean, I'm sure McGill, like you're saying, has the resources to wage that kind of front. But it seems like it's quite the drain on resources. I'm curious how's morale?
I think morale is pretty strong, actually.
That's great.
You know, we are proceeding to arbitration with McGill University about the MOA to, you know, maintain our stance that there is no default. And in order to do that, we've turned to the community and we've asked for help raising funds. And the support has been like enormous. We launched it last Monday, and when I checked, we launched it last week. When I checked on Monday, we had received donations from 80 people, almost $3,000 from 80 people. You know, I was really surprised to see. Honestly, even I was surprised to see the amount of support that was coming from the community, from QPERG, from other organizations saying, oh my gosh, something similar is happening, you know, like at York University or whatever.
Of course, yeah. These are never isolated, right? Everyone sort of shares tactics in this kind of sense. They share tactics or targets. But it's great to hear that there's so much, I guess, funds coming in. There's so much solidarity being shown. It's great to hear.
Yeah, and we have a team of really good lawyers. We're at Julius Gray's law offices.
Shout out.
They're cutting us like a really good solidarity rate. They are like a team of really experienced and passionate, like social justice oriented lawyers, and they think that we have a pretty good case. They think we have quite a strong case.
I mean, I'm no lawyer, but it sounds like the basis for these accusations from McGill seem pretty. I don't know what's the opposite of watertight. Like what's that? It's very loose, you know. I think especially if they are claiming harassment, but then through other mechanisms they have for dealing with harassment, nothing's there. Then it's hard to back that up. And I personally, it's so to me incredibly evident that this is sort of politically based, and they're just trying to, if not squash the kind of solidarity for Palestine, at least just throw something. They're trying to put something in the spokes, right? Slow it down.
You know, yeah, and I find it very interesting as well because, you know, luckily working at QPerk, I've been able to have sort of a view of activism at McGill over some period of time. So I've been working at QPerk since 2020. I was a student from 2016 to 2019. This is like the most repression I've seen McGill use against student activists yet. Wow. And it's really interesting because like there are groups like Divest McGill, which was like divest from fossil fuels. They use a lot of similar tactics. They also had a student strike for the climate. They also occupied a building on campus, and they didn't receive nearly the same amount of pushback.
That's interesting. It's interesting when you start to see that sort of like, I guess, unevenness, right, in sort of tactics. I guess, yeah. Maybe they didn't protest enough. I don't know. That seems strange.
They were in the arts building for 2 weeks and they didn't
them,
you know? Yeah. There wasn't like the humongous amounts of tear gas that we saw when they tried, when SPHR's, well, sorry, not SPHR. It was not SPHR. Students who were concerned about McGill's investments occupied the James Edmund building.
Oh, right, yes. Yeah. I recall, yeah. I believe our reporter back then was at that as well. Well, I'm curious what's next then for QPerk McGill? What's the way forward looking like?
Well, the legal path is pretty long. It's actually, in some ways, it's not that exciting. You know, our lawyer was saying like the next step for him is to set arbitration dates with McGill's lawyers. There's a lot of just like scheduling
pure process.
Process. What we're working on right now as the organization is really to try to, you know, let people know that this sort of repression is happening, that this repression is escalating. Let other groups know to, you know, watch out. I think that McGill is trying to set some like pretty dangerous precedent for groups like all over the country, all over the world. And to just, go around talking about it, raising funds. That's also good. But I think
where can people go to give you some funds if they want?
So our website is QPerk McGill, QPIRG McGill, MCGILL.org. And if you go there, there's a link up top that says donate. So you can donate to our legal fundraiser that way.
Awesome. Well, I'm kind of curious. Is this affecting QPerk McGill's resources for other things, ongoing projects?
Yeah, definitely. Part of the original letter we received about the default, they also took away our right to book rooms on campus. That was something that was in our memorandum of agreement as well. And it's actually been quite a drain on us to not be able to book rooms on campus. We weren't able to book rooms on campus for our free popular education series in the spring. We had to have our annual general meeting online. We really wanted to gather, but we couldn't find a space that was central enough and free. Then we're looking forward to programming over the summer. Like, this probably is not going to get resolved over the summer. Right. We're really concerned about our ability to continue hosting programming close to McGill students that is like accessible for them to go to. Right.
Seems to be their sort of plan, right? Sort of draw resources away from these other things.
Yeah, but
make it more difficult.
You know, like we were supposed to give a training, like the QPerk McGill staff were supposed to give a training about homelessness to campus life and engagement at McGill, and that just got canceled out of nowhere over the default. You know, like they're really sort of closing in on what sort of programming we can give, and because we're not just SBHR. We support tons of other initiatives. So now this homelessness training was canceled that was supposed to help Frosh leaders know how to talk about homelessness with their with new students.
Right. I guess it would be one thing for them just to ask you to, I guess, I don't know, to deal with, it'd be one thing for McGill to ask you to deal with this SBHR stuff, kind of in this sort of maybe precise kind of way, but it seems like they're willing to take resources away from all these other projects as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it obviously increases the pressure on us. Obviously, we as a staff are spending a lot more time, a lot more of our time and energy that would normally be spent on summer projects, on fighting the default, on contacting different people. And yeah, I mean, thankfully this fundraiser is going pretty well. So we haven't had to divert the most. We haven't had to stop funding any other projects because of it yet, but we did we did pause funding to our library. We have an alternative library that's free for community members. I have a tote with that. Yes, yeah. We have to decide to stop acquiring new things for it for now, so that money could be spent on our lawyer as well. Yeah. I mean, it's like what I was saying before about just the time, energy, money drain that this legal process is
incredibly concerning stuff. Hopefully Concordia doesn't get any ideas and starts coming after us for Palestine stuff. But yeah, I mean, thank you so much for coming on, talking about this.
Well, yeah, thanks for having us on.
Of course. I think it's important that we hear what sort of tactics are being used against groups that are doing important work, and hopefully we can raise some funds for you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm just hoping that people hear about this and hear about the escalating tactics that universities probably everywhere are using against.
I mean, you see this. I mean, it's like we were saying before, right? We sort of see this in other kind of contexts and different little forms, right? Especially if we're talking about if I really have to zoom out now and we talk about sort of anti-protest, anti-university stuff in Toronto, we see the bubble bylaw, which is sort of tries to create this cordoned off zone of no protesting, right? Maybe in a similar way of talking about people reducing access to services to some of these buildings that are being protecting the people inside those buildings from harassment of the protesters, right? That you can start to see in a lot of Canadian context and international context as well, that sort of people trying to demarcate that line of between protest and harassment. It's concerning thing.
Yeah, definitely. It's very concerning, very alarming.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Ivory, for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Take care.